So it fluctuates from year to year quite majorly compared to other protein sources such as cheap imports from protein meals and canola meals, etc. But as I said earlier, Victoria's production and so is New South Wales production is predominantly where we have a very strong domestic market. A lot of those peas get soaked up in that domestic market and we never see them visually for exporting. You have as I said, two large splitters in Ward Mackenzie and Unigrain, and both those companies use large quantities of peas for export and also for domestic consumption as well into the supermarkets. So prudentially, we really only have two major areas where we have volume for exports. One is predominantly South Australia and then Western Australia. So to answer your question, it's very hit and miss and year to year depending on what the stock feed values are doing in comparison.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Brett. Coming to Chad, Chad, you are the most important factor in terms of size to this market. And you mentioned earlier that the stocks are tight in Canada. Could you put a number on what are the stocks left in Canada? And could you give us some kind of a forecast of how you see your sales of the remaining stocks split up between India, China, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and at the rate at which these stocks will deplete or the disappearance will happen?
Sure. I guess for stocks remaining, was it last week or a couple weeks ago, StatsCan actually just came out with a report of stocks on farm. Their report suggested on farm and in the handling system, there was about 900,000 tons of field peas, so that's greens and yellows, that were still in the system yet to be marketed for Canada. In saying that, I just got my numbers right here, but in saying that, a usual, I guess, seed, you had to deduct your seed and you have to deduct your carryout or estimated carryout in order to get ultimately a number that is left to market. Roughly, I'm assuming roughly around 2.7 to 3 million acres for new crop, so that leaves us with about 217,000, to deduct 217,000 tons for seed, and then another 200,000 tons for a rough carryout number, which may be high this year, but let's just say it's 200,000 tons. That leaves about 480,000 tons of peas to market, and that is ultimately February forward. In saying that, not to disagree with StatsCan too much, but I think that they made an assumption on feed waste and dockage, which was a little bit on the high side in their report a couple weeks ago. So I am making an adjustment there of about 287,000 tons, going to add that back into the available supply. I don't believe feed waste dockage is that high. That number could correspond into higher exports, and it's just not included in that number at the timing of the report, or their production could be off a little bit and in fact is maybe a little bit higher than what they're suggesting at that point in time. Long story short is with what we have on the books right now for January, February, that's shipping or yet to be shipped, plus what my expectation or my guesstimate is March through July of what is already on the books for container and bulk shipments, that leaves us with just shy of 400,000 tons of field peas in Canada available for market. So basically that 400,000 tons will be consumed or split among India, China, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and the US. The US to a lesser extent, but with the US situation this year, normally there's about 30 to 40,000 tons of exports from Canada to the US because US is ultimately going to be running out of peas. As Jeff mentioned earlier, we expect exports out of Canada to increase to about 60, possibly even 70,000 tons this year. Not a huge number, but at the end of the day, when stocks are tight, there will be more Canadian stocks flowing south. I guess to break it down, by region specifically, out of that 400,000 tons remaining, as I mentioned earlier, India has taken 630,000 tons to date. I believe that there is still something in there. I mentioned, 900,000 to maybe a million. With only 400,000 left, maybe that's a little bit on the high side. With current stocks in India, probably a little bit on the high side. But I think out of that 400,000 tons, India would at least have to take, or I expect India to take half of that. China could easily take the other half, but let's say, at least 25%, and the remaining 25% would be split between Bangladesh, the US, Pakistan, and basically Cuba.
Thanks, Chad. Just to conclude, just to summarize what you said, you say that the exportable surplus in Canada is just 400,000 tons.
That is assuming the seed number of 217,000
Right.
tons plus a carryout of 200,000 tons. So actually, if we take the carryout to zero, which ultimately will not happen because it's impossible in my opinion, but 200,000 tons is very, very tight when it comes to a carryout, so that's my assumption. So assuming that there's no carryout, you're left with 600,000 tons to market. So that carryout number is, I guess you could argue, is it 100, 150, 200, possibly even higher if no one's going to buy anything for the next few months. But that's just an assumption I made on the carryout.
So if I'm correct with what Chad is sticking his neck out and saying that there is only 400,000 to 500,000 tons left in Canada with a shipment period available for us before the new crop of up to July or August.
Well, ultimately, the absolute earliest that new crop would be harvested is late August. Shipment in early September, which means arrival in India, early October at the absolute earliest.
So, ladies and gentlemen, between March and August, Viterra says that there is only 400,000 to 500,000 tons of peas carry out left in Canada. He believes that India should be taking half of that, another 100,000 tons to China, and the balance should get distributed between Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Cuba, as I believe. But now, Chad, coming to the key point, where would you put the prices to move between now and new crop? And I think all of us here are very, very keen to know what the price is going to be starting from March and heading down towards new crop, or say July, August. What direction do you see the prices to be, and what price range would you like to share with our participants here? Right. I think let's give Chad a break. Russia. What is the exportable surplus out of Russia, Hakan?
Well, so I'll give you good news. There's not much left. Now, you were asking what to do with the 500,000 tons that is in India, and Chad says there's nothing left in Canada, so you may just ship them back. Now, the living joke aside, Russia, I think there is hardly anything left in the pipeline, and the feed compound is also changed, and earlier the feed prices were low, and the yellow pea was not working. The price was not working into South Med. And over the last 2 months, we have seen a lot of sales towards the traditional markets. And the supply has been dried out, as well as there has been splitting demand in Turkey for further exports. So that has taken away about 15, 16 small boats. And if I'm to put a number, I would estimate not more than 25,000, 30,000 tons is what would be available for export. But this excluding the vessels that are under loading.
So are there vessels under loading, Hakan?
I believe there are, yeah.
Right. And are they headed towards the subcontinent, or?
Difficult for me to say, because it's a multinational company, so they might go any direction.
Right. Right. Thank you, Hakan. Hakan says there's just 25 or 30,000 tons of peas left in Russia. the shipment, the period that is available for that to be consumed is from March, I think, up to July. So almost nothing left in Russia. It seems very, very tight, and now we need the inputs from me. So what's left in France and Ukraine?
Yeah, to start with the Ukraine, it's the same as in Russia. I would say there's hardly anything left. You could do a couple of containers, but bulk vessels, that's finished. Normally, Ukraine always sells their crop when they're coming in, and it has been sold by the end of October, early November. And after November, you will hardly find any crop in Ukraine. They don't want to keep it, they don't want to like it, they don't like it to keep it, so they sell it as soon as they can. For France, it's a little bit difficult story. On paper, there should be something left, but it's difficult to get your hands on there, because today, with the high wheat price we have seen the last couple of months, with the situation in South America, which had dry weather, then you saw what happened. Then it starts to rain in South America. Then you had the Russians saying, "Okay, we have a stop in the exports." I'm talking about wheat again. So that's why they drive the price of the future market of wheat up, and that's what also drives the price for the peas up. And farmers didn't want to sell, so there should be something left. And if you can put your hands on, you will find one cargo, maybe two cargos, or I would say around the 440. Old crop until August. First, the crop in France, the first cargoes you can get is end of July. I would say between the 15th and 20th July from the southwest of France. Then we get your first new cargoes. And that is, I would say today is more or less the same price. So it's hardly any difference between all the new crop first cargoes out of the southwest.
Correct. Thank you, Mies. So there again, there's just one or two cargoes, which would mean about 30 or 40,000 tons left in France, almost nothing in Ukraine. So we are looking at a fairly tight scenario, as from what our panelists are saying today. We are looking at anywhere between 400, 500, and on the upper side, 600,000 tons of peas left in all the origins, Canada, France, Ukraine, Russia. India, of course, the situation is different. Over 500,000 tons are left in stock, but we have a quick offtake, and we have till July or till August, or I would say even September, before any new crop comes here. So I'd like to come to the final stage of our panel discussion today. We have got from experts the stocks which are lying in the countries of origin. I would like to encourage each one of the panelists to put some kind of a price range that the peas will trade from today till the harvest of new crop. So can we start with you, Mies?
Yeah, on the old crop, I just said you might find a couple of cargoes at 440. New crop, the range which I said in my presentation, you will have a price which is, no, I just said before already, wheat price plus 100, 260, plus $100 is 360, plus 65 freight. You talk about a down price on the downside for $425 C&F India. That's what I think is on the downside.
Okay.
So on the upside, it depends on the wheat. It depends on the currency and depends on the wheat. But you can go up easily at 475. That's without any problems, I think, today.
So you think that the market in France, French peas, is well supported at $425?
Yeah, the range is 425, 475.
Unless wheat collapses.
Yeah, it depends also on the currency. That's very important.
Okay, very clear. Mies is at 425 at the bottom. He doesn't need to. He doesn't know where the market will go on the upside. Depends completely on the wheat. That is the way peas are traded in France. They are linked to the wheat futures, and most of the trading is done in premiums, I guess. Hakan, on the Russian, as you said, there is nothing, but whatever it is there, what do you think they will price it at, and which way do you think it will move?
Well, on the old crop, okay, we don't expect any shipments before April. As I said, everything is frozen right now.
Right.
And by the time we see new shipments, we are talking of April. On the old crop numbers, I would say nominally around $400, little $5, couple of $5 here or there will be the CNF numbers on the old crop. And the new crop will depend a lot, again, on the currency. Now it's the other way around. From 32, it's down to 29.25. So currency has become stronger.
Right.
And this is certainly gonna, bring some resistance to lower numbers. But I would say the Russian peas, in the end of the day, needs to be exported, and the prices in subcontinent will be, basically determining the prices in Russia or Ukraine.
So you maintain that they will be between $395 to $400 as a
That-
bottom, yeah.
That's on the current crop. New
All
crop will depend on the currency.
Currency, right.
The overall feed compound as well. I
Right,
forgot to
right.
mention that. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Chad, you're on now.
For old crop, I think we've seen the lows, and in saying that, it's basic result just because of the tight stocks. But on a FOB side, like I mentioned earlier, around that 380 mark. Again, one could argue freight maybe by $5, but somewhere around that 420 to 425 CFR India, I think is definitely going to be supported. If not by India, then by someone else, like I mentioned, China or a few other players. Going into new crop, I guess anything can happen. Being this early in the game, I think to support the acreage, as I mentioned, we need to be at least 400. You're going to have your currency fluctuations potentially and outside markets, which may affect things longer term. But I think as we approach new crop, that's